Okay, it's 10:30, so we're going to get started. Welcome everyone to today's webinar. We're going to focus on creating ads with data feeds today. My name is Chris Neufeld, and I head up the customer success team here at Adicado, and I'm excited to share all this information about data feeds and best practices and how to use the Adicado platform to make ads using product inventory data feeds. So let's jump in and get started. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Today's session is going to run approximately 30 minutes, just depending on how we do with the flow and questions at the end. I do have everyone muted, so if you have questions as we go through this, please type them into the chat interface, and I'll do my best to address them. If not at that immediate time, but at the end when we have a Q&A period. Okay. So before I jump into the system, I wanted to give a bit of an overview and talk about what do we mean when I say we, what does Adicado mean by the term product? So we'll define that. What is a data feed? We'll talk about that and why would I use one? And then what should a data feed contain? And then from there, then we'll jump into the system and do a variety of different builds showing you the details of the data feed setup in terms of like the location of the feed, format, structure mapping, automated updates, all that stuff that you'll see as you go through the process. Okay, so let's get started. Let's talk about products. Most advertisers, many advertisers, not all, but many, sell what we would characterize as products. So think of an auto dealer where they're selling specific vehicles, individual vehicles. You might have a retailer like Best Buy where they're selling electronics and laptops. You could have a real estate company like a brokerage that's selling properties or condos. So those would all be examples of products, in this case, physical products. However, it doesn't always necessarily need to be a physical entity, the product itself. So think of travel, where you have like United Airlines and they're selling flights. And that could be, a variation where it's going from San Francisco to New York, and you could have departures going on different days and different times. So every one of those individual flights could be considered a product. So even though it's not a physical entity in that sense, it would be still considered a product. Now you contrast that with something like, for example, a lawyer or a physiotherapist where they're providing more of a service. So they don't have like a large number of different products or SKUs that they're selling. That's more of a service-based thing. So today is more of the focus about advertisers that have a large set of products, whether those are physical or non-physical. Okay. So when we think of those products, typically you'll find them on the advertiser's website. And ultimately what's happening is behind the scenes, it's sitting in some kind of database or product management, inventory management platform that contains all the information about every individual product. And typically that can be exported into some format of a data feed. Now, the easiest way to think of a data feed would be by thinking of it as like a spreadsheet, like this Excel document here. So in this scenario, you have every individual product is represented as its own line on the spreadsheet. And all the different columns represent the different attributes of that product. So for example, you have a product ID or a product title, price, the brand name, the image, etc. So that's the simplest way to visualize a data feed. And it can come in many different formats, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But if you think of, okay, I've got all these products, why would I want to export this and what would I use it for? Now, the power of having all of your products broken out in this format in a structured data feed is that it allows the advertiser to now advertise those individual products, and more importantly, to personalize the ad so that you can show the right product to the right individual. So you see this, we've all experienced it in Google product ads, in Google search ads, right? So could be in Facebook, and of course, on display advertising, which is where Adicado comes in to use that product inventory and create all the hundreds or thousands of ad variations for all of the products that an advertiser might have, so that the ads can be personalized to the user that's seeing the ad, and so they have a better experience and the advertiser has better performance. So hopefully that makes sense in terms of what a data feed is and why we would want to use one. Now, we get asked commonly about when people are setting up or they're dealing with data feeds about, does this feed have the right things in it? So the best way I can address that question, and what I always tell people, is to think of two different types. So what you're looking for are two different types of data to be present within the data feed. Now, in this example here, we've got an auto inventory feed in like a CSV spreadsheet format. And we've got an ad here just to sort of visualize what we're talking about. So the first type of data that we want to look for is what we call the content data. So think of all the attributes that you want to dynamically display within the ad, like the year, the make, the model, the mileage, the price value, the image. All of the things that you want to visually see represented in the ad need to be present in the data feed if we're going to use that to generate the ads. So that's the first one, is the content data. Now, there can be a lot of other data attributes that are in a feed that we may or may not use. Some of that would be the second type of data that we're looking for, which is metadata that we use for ad decisioning. So an example would be a vehicle ID number or a product ID number, so that we can match up that product that the user looked at on the website and show them that exact same product or exact same vehicle. You could have other categories or attributes like the type, in this case, referring to new versus used. Somebody looked at a new vehicle, you want to make sure you only show them new vehicles. Or it could be year, make, and model as an example. So I looked at this particular vehicle and I want to see others that match that same make or model. So you'll notice that some of the attributes, like those ones there, can be both used for metadata targeting and also as content within the ad. Okay, so those are the key things to look for, primarily the content elements, and of course some type of product ID value. That's the most critical one. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense in terms of the what a data feed is, and the uses for it, and the things to look for within the feed itself. And don't worry if your feed has lots of other attributes. You don't need to use everything. In the Advertiser system, it doesn't need to use everything, so it's perfectly fine to ignore attributes. It's not going to hurt anything if there's too many. If you got a pile of other things that we're just going to ignore, it's okay. Okay, so let's jump into the platform now. I'm going to log into my account, or I'm already logged into my account. And what we're going to do is create a new advertiser and go through a number of different scenarios of campaign setups using different variations of the data feed options that are available to us. So the first thing we'll do is make our new advertiser. So up in the top header, you'll see we have this blue advertiser menu. If I click on here, I can, of course, see all my advertisers, or I can make a new one. So I'm going to make this new advertiser, and I'm going to call it Data Feed Guy. Datafeedguy.com. And for all the examples I'm going to do today, we will use the retail vertical. And business subtypes, I'm just going to choose accessories. It doesn't really matter because I'm just going to be doing a bunch of different examples. So we'll give this an address, 123 Main Street, and located in Canada, in British Columbia. This takes a second loading. Vancouver, and V7V7V7, and save that. Okay, so I've made my advertiser, and now we are going to create our campaign. So I'm going to run through and build a few different campaigns, each one illustrating a different data feed scenario. And I'm going to go through the process, because it's pretty quick. I'm going to go through the process of creating the individual campaigns all the way through, so you can see the creative at the end result of it. But I'm going to go through it quickly and spend most of the time discussing the product stuff. So for this first one, we're going to do use the body shop as an example, and I'm going to put in here filter as a little hint on what we're gonna do. Campaign objective doesn't really matter in this case. I'm not so worried about it. Let's just go pretend it's actually product showcase. We'll use that one. So I'm going to save and continue. And just for those that haven't seen this, the objective here is really just defining what the ad is going to do. Like, how is it going to fill products? So if I was to choose last view, that would be showing showing users or viewers the last viewed product that they looked at on the website, or the last viewed and others from the same brand or gender, etc. Now in this case, you'll see why, because I'm choosing filters, I'm going to choose the product showcase objective here, and this will make a little bit more sense in a second. Okay, so save and continue, and now we get into the product section, which is where we deal with the data feeds. So the first choice that you see when you land on this page is the drop down that's asking, do I want to create my products only for this campaign, or do I want to do it for my advertiser? So there's a bit of a hierarchy question that's happening here. And there's a couple reasons why you might want to choose one over the other. The most common one would be to do at the campaign level. But I am going to show you this first time through. I'm going to show you doing it at the advertiser level. And the reason is that I might have a scenario where I want to do filtering of attributes in I have one master feed for an advertiser, and I want to filter certain attributes for certain campaigns. So let me show you what I mean here. I'm going to select creating for the advertiser, and the next choice it's asking is how do we get your data? So there's two choices here. The first one is grab the product data with some code on my website, which is using the Advertiser scraper. Or using a data feed. Now, this option on the scraper is something that we'll cover in probably another webinar because that's a whole different path, and that has to do with scraping products right off of the website, which Advertiser can do. But today's session is all about data feed, so we're going to focus on that today. So I'm going to select the data feed. So I've chosen at the advertiser level, and the data feed is how we're going to get the data. Now you'll notice I have this button here for filtering options, and this is what the whole idea was of me doing this first example. So I'm going to be doing the body shop. So let me just show you what I'm talking about. In this example of this data feed that I have, here's a body shop's feed, just a sample feed, and this is just on a Google sheet, as you can see. You'll notice I highlighted 3 individual products. This is the category attribute, and 3 of these products are what are classified as face products, and the others are body products. So I think there's 12 in total, and 3 of which are face products. So in this scenario, we want to pretend that we only want to show face products in this campaign that we're about to create. So when I click on the filtering options, you'll see I have a bunch of different attributes that I can filter on. So for example, if I wanted to, exclude products that were under a certain price or different condition, etc. In this case though, what we want is we want only face products as we saw in the thing. So I'm gonna select face, hit OK. Got my filtering in place now. So if you click here, you can see that. Okay, that's good. And now the first step is how should we get your data? Okay. Now, there are 2 choices here. There's the HTTPS, which is basically like a URL location, and then there is an FTP. Now, I'm going to come back and we'll do an FTP one a little bit later, but we'll start off with just a hosted URL. So this is just telling the system where can I access this data feed from. So in this example, as I said, we're using a Google Sheet. So I'm just going to copy that link and paste it in here. And one thing to note is that if you are using a Google Sheet, you need to make sure that the sheet is opened up in the settings so that it's shareable, so that the system can actually access that. Okay, so I pasted it in, and then I go click on the fetch sample. And what you'll see now is it's pulled in all of the data, and I have it here, and it's asking me, how is the data structured? How is your data delimited? Now, almost 9 times out of 10, it's almost always going to be comma separated or CSV, comma separated values. So select that one first, and it's almost always going to be the choice you're looking for. And what you'll see is you get this pop-up below that has all of these little boxes and a representation of the data feed. So you can see down here, this looks exactly like the way the feed looks on the Google Sheet, okay? So you'll notice that many of the boxes have already been mapped through to the individual columns in the spreadsheet, in the data feed. So that is the Advertiser system automatically doing that mapping for us so that it's identified, okay, I can see I've got an attribute for product ID, I'm gonna match that to the product ID value in the feed, title to title, category to category, price, product image, product link. You can see they've all been mapped automatically. Now, it could be that you maybe don't want to include certain attributes. So you could, for example, I don't want the price to be displayed in my ad. Fine, then don't include it. But price is often an important one for clients. So we're going to put that back in. And you can see it's just simple drag and drop. And you don't have to map all of the attributes in the data feed. However, there are some that are really critical because you need, for example, to have a product link. Otherwise, if the user clicked on that specific product, the system doesn't know where to send the user to on the website. So product link, And you'll notice my text here has gone red saying we've tried to detect the fields, but double check there's something that needs to be fixed. If I put the product link back, there we go, my text goes green and I've got everything that I need. So the last step, so number one, just to recap, was where do we get the data feed from? How is it structured? It's comma separated. We do the mapping, and then there's the scheduling. And the scheduling is referring to how frequently will the Adacato system reach out to the data feed, in this case the Google Sheet, and look for an update. Now, if we knew that, for example, the Body Shop does their data feed updates every day at midnight, then we might go 10 minutes after midnight, that's AM, and go like that. So that would mean that, we know the data feed, the Body Shop does their updates at midnight. So we're going to come in 10 minutes behind that and then grab the new feed that's sitting there and update the ads so that any price changes or products going in and out of stock, that type of thing, will be reflected in the ads. Okay, so that's the scheduling and how that comes into play. And you'll notice here in this drop down, the frequency is set to every day, but in some cases, you might have advertisers that need it to be more frequent than that. So it could be every hour, as an example, 10 minutes off the top of the hour. So whatever, you've got that control to define the frequency of the updates. So if I'm happy with all of that, I'm going to go up and save and continue. And now we get to the creative. Now I am going to go through this relatively quickly on the creative because we'll keep going through this on every one. Just one thing to note, near the top here in the theme library, what we have is all these individual themes that can be used by the advertiser. You can select one and then customize it and use it for your campaign. Some of the themes have this description underneath that says basic no feed. And those themes are intended for users that don't have, or advertisers that do not have, a data feed. Think of them as more like static ads. So we're going to ignore those ones and just use all the, focus on all the rest of them that have, that don't say that, because those are the ones that are used for product-based ads. So I am going to go with, let's go with this Artigo one. I'm going to click on the icon there. It's just saving the theme into my campaign. Just takes a second, then it'll put us into the creative editor view. There we go. And you can see I've got products here that were pulled in from the data feed, but I'm still seeing the placeholder assets. For example, if I click on the ad preview and I go from creative view to ad preview, you can see that I need to upload my own logo. So I'm going to click here and put in my logo for the Body Shop. There we go, looks good. And then the other thing I want to change is maybe I'll just, instead of on the CTA button, instead of shop now, or sorry, buy now, I'll make it shop now. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to save all and continue. Turn on my campaign. Congratulations, I built it. I'm going to turn it on, close that. And now on the publish page, I've got my preview link, and there we go. Here's my ad, and it has, got a little bit of an error going on there. Sometimes it can take a second to process. And you've got the products in there. Okay, 1, 2, and there should be a third one coming in a sec. There we go, great. Okay, so if I go back to here and I go back to my campaign and I click on the navigation element here to go to the products, you'll see in my campaign, because I'm in my Body Shop filter campaign, I have 3 products, and those are the 3 that correspond with the filtering that we set up to show only the face products, okay, which is exactly what we wanted. Now, if I go to my, up to my advertiser level, and I go to the advertiser level on products, you'll see there's actually 12 products. So what that's saying is that when I pulled in the data feed, there's actually 12 products. So the advertiser itself has 12 products, but this particular campaign that we built only has 3 because of the filtering that we did. So that's where the advertiser level product feed and the filtering comes into play. Okay, so that's scenario number 1. So let's go back to our campaign dashboard. I'm going to click on the campaign menu up in the header, go to all campaigns, and here we have the Body Shop filter campaign that we made. Okay, so now we're going to make a new campaign, and we will call this one the Ahava campaign level one, and we'll pretend this is going to be a last viewed campaign. Save and continue. We're back to the product section. We're going to, instead of doing it at the advertiser level like we did for the first one, we're going to build this campaign and have a data feed only at this campaign. So why, just to go back to why make that decision based on advertiser versus campaign level. So some other examples could be where you have a retailer that has specific products that they only want to run in one campaign, or maybe they've got individual campaigns for different markets that have different currency values, or in different languages where you've got different product descriptions in different languages. So there could be any number of reasons that you might want to do it at the campaign level. And by default is probably which is why we have it there as the first choice. Typically your data feed is going to be set up at the campaign level unless you want to do filtering, which we already saw. Okay, so we're going at the campaign level. How should we get our data feed? In this case, we're going to do another Google Sheet example, a CSV, just so you can see how this works. We'll go through this quickly. I paste in here, fetch the sample, and here we go. Same process, it's comma separated. I get all my mapping, this looks good. I'm not even gonna bother with the scheduling, I'll just leave it as it is. And I save and continue. I come into here and I'm going to choose a different theme for this Ahava advertiser or Ahava campaign. Just takes a second. There we go. Okay, so it's pulling in products. I'm going to put in my company logo. In this case, it's the Ahava logo. There we go. And the rest I will leave as it is. I'm going to save all, continue, turn on my campaign, and here we go. There's my Ahava campaign with my products. Okay, so that was, as you can see, a really quick build of a data feed based campaign using products at the campaign level. Okay, so let's go back to, I'm just going to close those previews. I'm going to come back to my all campaigns dashboard. So I've got the Ahava one that I made at the campaign level, the body shop, which I did at the advertiser and filtering. The next one I'm going to do is to talk about using a different format instead of Google Sheet. This one is going to be an XML format, and I will speak to that in just a second here. Okay, so I'm going to set this up at the campaign level. And how should we get your data feed? Again, I'm going to use the URL, but instead of a Google Sheet, I am going to use an XML data feed. So if you think of the actual data itself and how it's structured, it could be formatted in a number of different ways. It could be in like a CSV spreadsheet. It could be on a Google Sheet, as we saw. Sometimes advertisers will have their data feeds outputted in an XML format. And if you've never seen what that looks like, here's an example of an XML feed. And you'll see, if you look at this closely, you'll notice it has all those same attributes like a product ID, a SKU, a name, a URL for the destination URL, a price value. It's just the data is structured in a different way. It's using XML, which is extensible markup language, I believe, just kind of a different language and formatting for the data. So what we're going to do in this case is, and I'm going to show you, I'm going to copy this and put this into my sheet. Now, the one thing about XML is that there can be any number of different variations of structure within an XML data feed. And when you put in the location of the XML feed and click the fetch sample, if you see this red text, saying, please make sure that you have the correct URL and the file exists, this is basically saying it's an indication that the Adacado system cannot recognize that particular XML file. It's probably structured in a way that we're not anticipating. So the data feed needs to be structured in a Google product feed format. So let me show you what that looks like here's an example of, you'll notice it has that same sort of XML look and feel to it. It's just using standardized attributes and the standardized structure that Google uses on their product feed. And because Google is who they are and it's such a widely used standard, that's what we've incorporated into our system in terms of recognizing and working with XML feeds. Okay, so I am going to copy this version, this URL of this particular feed. Let me come back to here. If I paste in a proper XML feed that's in the Google feed format, what you'll see is I don't get that error message, and it skips that whole mapping process. It says the file detected is Google XML feed. Advertiser will automatically map the data for you. So basically, because we recognize the structure and the format of that advertiser's data feed, because it's a Google product format, the system does it all automatically, so you don't even have to worry about it. The only thing I would need to do is choose my scheduling and make that adjustment, whatever that might be. I can save and continue. I get to the theme gallery. Let's choose, I don't know, let's go something a little bit different. Choose one of these new ones here. And again, this is just saving this into our theme, sorry, into our campaign. And so you can see it's pulled in all these different products. I am going to upload my company logo. In this case, it's Reitman's. There we go. I can save all, continue, turn it on, close, and we're done. Okay, so now we've made another campaign. This time we did it with an XML product feed instead of a CSV sheet. So that was the third time through. Let's go back to the All Campaigns dashboard, and we're going to cover one more scenario. And in this one, we're going to call this the To Me campaign, and this is going to use an FTP. So come to here, back to the first choice, how we're going to set up the data. We'll do it for this campaign. Now, in all the examples we've done so far, we used a hosted URL location, whether it was a Google Sheet or an XML feed, but it was hosted somewhere on the advertiser side. The other alternative that we can use is what's called FTP, or File Transfer Protocol. Now, if you are not familiar with it, I'm just going to open up. I've got FTP software. It's called FileZilla. It's free software. You can download it. And really, it's very simple to use FTP. All the FTP software is looking for is tell me where to go, put in a username and password of the account that you're going to log into. Let me just grab my password here. And hit the quick connect, and you'll see what's happened is this FTP software has gone off. It's connected to this server. You logged in with this username and password, and here I am. I'm on. It just looks like a file management. Like I would see on my normal hard drive. And you can see there's a whole bunch of different files that are sitting on this location. And for our example today, we're going to grab this feed, this To Me Clean feed, and that's the one that we're going to use. Okay, so I'm just going to copy that name. Copy that name, To Me Clean, and that's the one we're going to use. Now, jumping back to, and I'm just showing you the FTP software just so you understand what FTP software looks like and what it is and how it works. Okay, so if I come back to our setup in the Advertiser system, I've selected FTP. You'll see I have all those same things that I just put in if I was using my own FTP software. So I put in the location, support 21. You can leave that. That's almost always going to be the one. Add a demo was my username. I have my password. I paste in. Now, the only thing else that I need to put in here is a file path, because we need to tell the system which which file to grab, because when it gets to that location and logs into that account, you remember that there was a whole bunch of different files that were located in that directory. But this is the one that we want to get, was that to_me_clean.csv. So that's what the file path is referring to, is the actual file name that we wanted to grab. So when I click the fetch sample, you can see, great, it's pulled all the data in. I just need to hit my, again, comma separated. I'm getting all my usual stuff that I would expect. It's mapped product ID, title, description, price, product link, product image. Okay, so everything looks good, perfect. I'm gonna save and continue. I get to my creative, and let's go with this Modena theme again. It's kind of cool. And this is just saving, again, this particular theme into my new campaign. And there you go. It's pulled in my To Me luggage products, these very nice looking bags. I simply upload my To Me logo. Looking good. Save all, continue, turn it on, and again, we're done. Okay, so here we are. Again, we built another new campaign. We used a different data feed. We used, and we have it. We used an FTP setup in this scenario. So if I come back to here and I go to my settings, you can see, we did it at the campaign level. We used FTP. This is where it was going. That was the login information. That was the file path, all the usual mapping. And that is, we've kind of covered 4 different scenarios on different data feed situations. So we're running probably a little longer than expected. So I'm just going to jump out, and I don't see any questions in the interface at the moment. So I'm going to jump out and just come back to my presentation and do a little bit of a recap. So again, the key things to look for when you're doing this is, remember that data feeds can be applied at the advertiser or the campaign level, right? So campaign level allows you to do different feeds for different purposes, like languages or whatever is kind of the default setting. But advertiser level allows you to filter products if you wanted to do that, as we saw in the very first example. Location, this is where you're going to access the data feed. So the system needs to know, is it going to be a hosted URL like that Google Sheet or an XML feed that's sitting somewhere, or is it going to be on an FTP server and we're going to access it there, okay? And then there's the file format. So we talked about CSV. We saw some examples of that. We did the XML. One that I didn't do is a TXT file, but it could be, that's an accepted format as well. So these are the acceptable formats. And then the scheduling we saw in terms of the updates can happen ranging from hourly up to daily, and you can just schedule that so that it's in sync with your advertiser. And that's it. So I am going to wrap up. We've gone a little over time, but I think that was a good session. Hopefully this was helpful for everyone. And if you do have any other questions or would like to learn a little bit more, please reach out to us at adacato.com. Use our chat interface in the system and engage with our customer success team live. And we look forward to working with you. Thank you.